Martin County on TV, talking business.
Hi, I'm Ned Koppen, president of the Fairmont Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here today with a couple of people from Martin Luther High School, Paul Steinhaus and Steph Zellmer. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Paul, let's start with you. Can you give us just a quick overview of Martin Luther High School and maybe what it stands for?
Yeah, Martin Luther High School, we've been in the community for quite a while already. We are the only parochial Christian high school in the area, at least for about an hour in terms of radius, if you will, by car. And we get the great privilege of doing a Christian education for our community.
Kind of a unique choice that we have compared to a public school.
Yeah, you know, the very unique thing about having the privilege of having choice within our community is the parochial schools and the public schools actually work to sharpen one another, I think, in terms of what we bring to the table. So we're obviously kind of competition in that sense, but I think we really drive the community to bring up their level of education holistically as we get a chance to introduce new things and be competitive.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing, if not a great thing. One thing that I read through some of your literature is, the wide geographical area that you guys pull from, that you actually have students from 10 different school districts.
Oh, well, I actually didn't realize that. This year we have somebody coming from Okoboji.
Wow.
It wasn't uncommon to pull from Blue Earth and then certainly Fairmont and way down to East Chain and then of course up near Truman and Medelia, and we had a family from Hanska not all too long ago. Yeah.
Wow. Can you maybe touch a little bit on when people make choices? How you make that choice on where you're going to go to high school, and how the funding works as well.
Oh yeah, those are two pretty broad spectrum topics. In terms of families making choices, it really comes down to do you want the Christian foundation within that educational dynamic? It is clearly something that the public school cannot offer. They don't quite get the same privilege. With that comes some freedoms that we also have. The taboo conversation might be a little bit about COVID, but I mean that has allowed us to maybe be open a little bit more and offer a little more freedom in that department. Also within the curriculum itself, we got a little more latitude and things that we can teach. I mean, obviously science is a great platform to have that discussion a little bit. We can talk about creation and God's plan for the things that he's made, and certainly there's some limitations there in terms of the public sector.
I also referring to some literature and kind of reading about Martin Luther. You guys have a couple of acronyms that you use and kind of a catchphrase: STREAM, Education for Life. And STREAM and Life are a couple of acronyms. And the thing that appealed to me about that was that, I wondered maybe are there limitations if I went to Martin Luther High School? And yet when you spell out those acronyms, you guys have a wide offering.
Yeah, I don't think we really limit in terms of the kids' ability to become learners. Mm-hmm. And I think that is foundational to any educational institution, is you want to teach kids to be learners. So then it's a little bit content independent.
Okay.
Obviously, you want to introduce kids to a wide variety of content when it comes to teaching curriculum. But the great privilege, I guess, we have is to be more global, because we can tie in the religious aspects to how things operate. Once again, it's something that we have some freedom to do. The other thing it certainly does is it has everything to do with maybe a little bit of an approach and philosophical approach in terms of education. How well do we teach critical thinking and decision making and discernment and those types of things? It's almost a hidden curriculum.
Okay.
We don't have to teach to a test. I guess there's another major difference between the schools, and because of that, we can focus around other things like discernment. I would say character development, integrity, some of the necessary intangibles that allow you to be successful both in the classroom and in the business arena, for sure.
So, Paul, there's a couple of unique things about Martin Luther High School that I don't want to miss out asking on, and one of those is your energies classroom, aquaponics, PSEO opportunities. Can you expand on those a little bit and tell us about that?
Yeah, well, I guess to talk about PSEO classes, we have a Concordia St. Paul professor on staff, and she does English. So we have, they changed the number of credits per class, so I got to be a little careful. It's 3 classes that we teach that are PSEO orientated on campus. We also have our science teacher who was a professor at Concordia St. Paul doing our physics class, but that changed a little bit basically because the syllabus for Concordia, they wanted to do a health-driven type of PSEO physics class, and we were driving it a little more engineering, so it didn't quite match up. So that presently isn't in the hopper, if you will, but something to look to regenerate. And then, of course, as our staffs grows in their education and becomes more eligible to teach those classes, we would, or if we bring new staff on, we could maybe orientate that a little differently. But it's certainly a great opportunity. The energies classroom is kind of a fun classroom to have. We built a car and we poured it out. It's an old MG, so it's British.
Sure.
Steering wheel still on the American side of the thing. It's actually built on an old Volkswagen chassis, and then it's this fiberglass MG car over the top. But we poured it out the engine so we can run on alcohol, and then the idea is to make our own fuel for the car, in which we have a still that students have built in the past, and we actually haven't fired it up yet. So kind of waiting for that to happen. And then, of course, in that same classroom, it's a geothermal classroom, so the floor is heated, comes from the ground, and we have a biomass stove in there as well. And so really our goal is to talk about renewable energies, just good environmental stewardship. It's kind of how that classroom is set up. And that's tied directly to the other half of the building is a greenhouse. And in the greenhouse, we have a aquaponics system, which is has a fish tank in it.
Okay.
And then, of course, we circulate the water out of the fish tank, and then it flows into plants that grow on a styrofoam pad floating in the water. So then they pull the nutrients out of the water. And we hope to have, we haven't done it yet, is fish fries. Friday night fish fries.
That'd be great.
Maybe we'll kick it in at Lent. I don't know. We got to try that in our community. I think it would go over great. But so that's very unique. In addition to all the regular agricultural offerings that you can do in a greenhouse, we are talking about. So it's not quite fully up to speed. We're talking about doing like we would call it maybe a homesteading class, and the goal is to put a garden on campus. Now here's where I may let out my secrets, and now all of a sudden the public school will jump on that one, right? And but here's where we sharpen each other. But to do a garden and then harvest in fall and actually do some canning, like do some old school kind of canning, and then of course take that into the spring dynamic and plant all the seeds early in the greenhouse, and then plant the garden in spring, and then we'll let it do its thing in summer, and then we'll start the whole thing over again. So
that'd be a great experience.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of some lost art in there, but there's a whole lot of science and a whole lot of just history and tradition and just practical knowledge that we can bring and share, and I think it'll be a blast.
Yeah, and you combine that with the sustainability programs that you have. Those all sound great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to bring in your guest, Steph Zellmer, who is a graduate of Martin Luther High School. When did you graduate, Steph?
I graduated in 2011.
And what's your story since then?
So I went to school in Sioux City, Iowa for college, and then I was actually there for graduate school as well. Moved back to the area in 2018, and I've been working for UHD since then. As? A physical therapist. So
terrific.
I'm also on the board of directors at Martin Luther. This is my second year. I'm the secretary, so it's been fun. It's been educational. I like being able to give back to the school. That's been my biggest thing, is giving my time.
So since you've graduated from high school and now you're on the board at the high school that you graduated from, Are there any differences in the high school experience that you can pinpoint?
Yes, there definitely are. I think technology has been huge, like a huge difference between when I was in high school versus now. Not only the greenhouse and the 3D printer that they have for science classes now, but just being able to offer more PSEO classes and using technology in that way. Technology advancements for like the COVID times too has been huge. I think we would have struggled back when I was in high school to incorporate all of the students that couldn't be in the classroom at that time, or students that needed to stay home, where, the last 2 years we've been able to bring those students into the classroom even if they're not physically in the classroom.
Yeah, for sure. So with all those, technological advances, how does that impact your role on the board as you look back to when you were a student in high school and now you're kind of guiding the school?
Sure. I think using my experience as a student, knowing, like what I could have benefited from then, and then trying to stay ahead of the curve now with the board, how can we kind of implement those types of things, based on what I maybe was lacking when I was in high school, and just advancements in general, and how we can kind of tie that back into make our school better.
One thing I want to touch on, I want to make sure that we don't miss is financing, and for a private high school, a parochial high school, that model is different from a public school. Can you talk a little bit about that? Either one of you.
A lot of our funding has to come externally. We don't get as much assistance from the state or from the government as a public school. It makes us a little bit more resilient, makes us a little bit more reliant as well, which can be an advantage, but it can also be a disadvantage. So I feel like without that extra funding, we need to reach out a little bit farther, and we're constantly thinking of ways to bring in some of that funding so that we can continue to make the school a better place, that we can continue to bring in students, that we can continue to compete with some of the schools that have funding that comes a little bit easier.
It allows parents to be more involved. Because we need that kind of volunteer community to be part of what we're doing, which I think really enriches the entire dynamic of what we have. It doesn't take too long to recognize that we really have a strong family kind of environment. And that is certainly due to the fact that parents are involved in a lot of different ways. Certainly fundraising is a big part of that.
They probably have to be.
Yes.
We really depend on that in large part. There are some interesting things coming down the pipe in terms of funding and school choice and tax dollars that we all pay in, regardless of what school we decide to go to, or even if we have kids, or have moved beyond that and our kids are well gone, we're all paying those dollars for education. But there are some bills that are introduced. The U.S. Supreme Court has weighed in on all this, that some of those monies definitely need to follow the family's decision in terms of where they go to school. That hasn't completely got to Minnesota yet as to how that package rolls out and continues forward. But that could make a big difference for us as we try to continue to find unique ways to get the money required to run a diverse educational program.
So let me ask you a general question. Curriculum. How do you determine what your curriculum is going to be? Who has input on that, etc.?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. With the freedoms we have, we can walk in a wide variety of directions. Now, certainly, in terms of putting forward a student who's prepared for what's coming around the corner, we want to try to walk in a blueprint that's already there. So we certainly do use the Minnesota State recommendations for receiving a high school diploma in the state. So that's a primary driver. So there's so many years of science, so many years of math, so many years of social studies and history, and foreign languages and all those kinds of things. Then, and certainly the board weighs in terms of what to offer, what not to offer. We just recently went through a little bit of a wrestling match in terms of should we offer a consumer math class. Mm-hmm. And the consumer math class is fantastic, super practical. Kids love it. And we use, in part, part of Dave Ramsey's course that really ties together stewardship and dollars and just financial responsibilities and those kinds of things. And we were talking about, do we need to make that a requirement? Or should we make it a requirement just because it's so necessary?
Right.
how to handle your credit cards, how to handle student loans, what to look for in interest rates. And interest rates, we all know, kind of run interesting waves. But that's been a very recent conversation. We talked about the homesteading class. The other thing that I think weighs in really strong is what are the strengths and weaknesses of our teachers? Mm-hmm. What do they love to teach? Instead of just getting pigeonholed into, we need to do this specific set of content, let's also teach what the teachers really love to teach. And that way, that passion shows. It helps role model vocation, how to use those gift sets to the best of their ability, and that plays in as well. That's where that homesteading idea came from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, good teachers can teach anything. At least they have the art of being a good teacher. You can teach anything, but you can really tell, whether you've been to conferences, seminars, whatever, when the people get into their element, it is easily recognizable.
Next, let's talk a little bit about the history of Martin Luther High School. We've talked a little bit about where we are right now today in 2022, but where did it start, and what is some of the history?
Steph's grandparents. That's where this starts.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So the school opened in 83. The first graduating class happened in 85, and it essentially was created out of an idea and a need for a Lutheran high school in this area. The area is saturated with high schools already, but there was not a Lutheran high school, and there were community members that felt that was necessary. So it kind of grew from a seed of needing that, and with donations and people's willingness, it happened.
Quick question.
Yeah.
It's a Lutheran high school.
Yeah.
Do you have to be a Lutheran to go?
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. Really, it's the Lutheran identification is, at least in terms of recognition, sometimes it scares people away, and that's not uncommon. It's unfortunate, but it's not uncommon. But it really tells you that the foundation of the school is going to have that conservative Christian platform.
Sure.
That it's built on. Really, in terms of denominational teachings, if you will, in the school, we really don't walk those lines. We want to teach a solid, biblical Christian foundation for the students. And they can take that into their families. I still think one of the best things that we can do is, even if we do something that's very Lutheran to say a non-Lutheran student, or maybe it's just overly Lutheran for our Lutheran students, or however you want to say that. But if you can bring a conversation home to the dinner table that has an eternal meaning, I don't think there's a better conversation you can have at the family dinner table. So if it's conversation between two different denominational thoughts, so be it. Let the families talk about those
Sure.
things. Yeah, it's great.
No student would ever be turned away.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So is there anything else we should know about Martin Luther High School as we wrap up?
Well, I think one of the best ways, if families are considering this type of educational platform, is come visit. That's really one of the best things I think you can do, because you can talk about having this environment that seems different, but unless you're in it, you don't really. It's just verbiage, because it really is something to be felt. So having students come for shadow days, having parents come visit, talks on the phone even are a little certainly welcome, but they have limits in terms of what that can do. You can go to the website and you can view the school from that overview as well, but it doesn't give you that same feel. And all that information's out there, whether it's the website or phone calls, but come and visit. I think that's really the best way to get a good feel for what that is all about.
And it seems to me, from what you just said, that you welcome those visits.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's fun. Now, for students, sometimes, they show up and they do these visit days, and they might show up and the kids have a work day in that one class and they don't have anything to do. So sometimes it's like, bring your toothpicks and hold your eyes open, because everybody in the class is kind of on their own, and at least for that one period. But once again, it's more about the cultural dynamic and the fit and the feel that they would get in that visit, as opposed to, 1 and 1 is 2 in the math class. I mean, every math class is going to do that part of it. So that part isn't going to be unique in any way, and maybe not exciting. But then to get to know the teachers and their personalities a little bit, how intimidating or not intimidating they are.
So, Paul, can you tell us again how to find out more about Martin Luther High School?
Yeah. Once again, our website is out there, martinlutherhs.com. And then, of course, you can call us. We're in Northrop, Minnesota, the great suburbs of Fairmont, Minnesota.
Any social media?
Oh, yeah. Well, Facebook is certainly out there. Our development director has been dabbling in TikTok, and I'm not the guy to go there, but...
I'm not either.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, there are other avenues in which that's the case, but Facebook, I would say, and just the regular website are probably the primary drivers on the internet. And then, of course, our phone number. And you can call and talk to me or any of our staff members and so on.
Sure.
I'd certainly like to take the window, thank Steph and all that she's done. It is awfully fun to have the alum come back and be part of what's going on, to help drive us into the next wave of where we're going and what we're doing. And she's been a real blessing to us on the board, for sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for being here today. And for Martin County TV's Talking Business, we'll see you next time.
Martin County on TV, Talking Business.